Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
All right, Peter, we're doing it again. Daily Cash Flow. It's Wednesday. How you doing?
George, I feel better this week than I did last week. I looked at our episode from last week and I just felt like I wasn't quite on and firing like I usually do.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm excited to come in contact with a high energy Peter today.
Busy week, though. I mean, look at the world, look at what's happening, look at everything that's in the headlines, everything that's happening economically.
Insane.
My God.
Yeah. No.
My God. What are people going to do?
Yeah. Do you want to just get into it? Do you have anything you want
Let's
to
just get into it, because I'm sure you're going to ask me about the top three things that
So the top thing for me is, like, unless listeners have been completely under a rock for the last week, the second largest banking collapse in U.S. history occurred last week with SVB.
Unreal.
And then 2 days later, you had Signature.
Second and the third largest.
Crazy.
You didn't mention First Republic either.
That's true. Yeah.
Took a little longer for that to happen, but that's more today. So today's what, the 16th.
Yeah. So
we're filming this today on the 16th. First Republic Bank news broke today that they're getting a private money injection of, I think, $30 billion. I care about that because I bank at First Republic. I used to bank at Signature. I don't anymore. I've never banked at SVB.
Yeah, how do you feel about? Do you feel like you dodged a bullet in that sense?
These banks, they were very well positioned. After the 2008 banking crisis, we put Dodd-Frank in place. The requirements for liquidity and reserves were upped significantly. Now, in 2016, under Trump, he rolled back some of the Dodd-Frank things. You know, Elizabeth Warren is out there trumpeting how this has all occurred because of that. I don't think so. I think you needed to roll back some of Dodd-Frank because times had changed, markets had changed, economic conditions had changed. So some of the things weighing down on how banks do business had to change as well, perhaps. So that's why the rollback in 2016 happened. And I don't think that that's responsible for today. I think what's responsible for what's happening this week is decades and decades of failed monetary policy, of printing money. The Fed has an unlimited amount of money. Unlimited. They want to print more, they just make more. Boop, just snap their fingers. And up comes billions and billions, trillions, whatever they want, right? We saw it during COVID. We've seen it so many times. There's all sorts of ways that they can print money. They can actually print money, roll it off the press, hit a button, send it into the accounts. There's QE, quantitative easing. There are all sorts of monetary policies which can be instituted which have the effect of printing money. So what you have is decades and decades of all this monetary policy causing this inflation, flooding the system with capital. You know, these SVB and Signature Bank, these events occur. Government says, we're not going to bail out, but they effectively bailed them out. They got bailouts.
Although not the employees, right? It was really just,
not the employees.
So that's the talking point.
Separate but similar discussion, I guess. And then, you know, the CEO in the year leading up to this week had sold millions of dollars worth of stock. Does that mean that he knew about this?
Right.
I don't think so. I think these CEOs, they're on a plan. They have to sell stock sort of regularly.
Yeah.
And when stock prices are high, they want to sell. That's their carrot for staying in there and working. Now, there's talk about the executives receiving bonuses the day of or the day before. I mean, I think all of that stuff sounds like normal stuff. It just so happened coincidentally that it happened on the same day that the news broke of the bank run. And so people are saying, oh, you paid out the executives, but the bank failed the same day. You're thieves.
People are saying similar things with like Credit Suisse, is under duress right now. And it's not, people feel like it's connected, but it's not connected. That's been happening separately anyway.
Who knows? Look, we're not going to be surprised if we hear that all of this is intentional.
Right.
But I just don't think it's intentional. I think what happens is, SVB is not a consumer bank. I mean, they're not holding deposits of plumbers and teachers and the common person that exists. That's not who they provide banking services for. They provide banking services for these startups, these tech companies, these entrepreneurs. Balances are higher, and people started withdrawing money from a bank. It was a good old-fashioned bank run.
Right.
They just withdrew their money. Now, what they did with it, I don't know. They got to put it somewhere else. And did you notice this? Here's the funny thing about the SVB collapse. In the days prior, there was a run-up of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was at 19,000, and it shot up to 25,000. Then they released the news about SVB, and it's been stable at 24, 25,000 since then. But, it begs the question, did they pull money out of SVB and put it into Bitcoin? I mean, there was there was more purchasing than there was selling of Bitcoin. That's why the price goes up.
And certainly that would fit the demographic that is interested.
It would fit the demographic. It would fit the timing. It also fits the narrative because people feel uncertain, unsafe, and unsure about our banks and our banking industry. When you put your money into the bank, we talked about this, I don't know how many times, George, when you put your money into the bank, they don't hold it. Right. They don't run back and lock it away and, sit on it like a chicken hatching eggs. Mm-hmm. They get rid of it. They don't want it. They want you to give it to them so they can lend it out and invest it and make spread, make margin and profit on the money that you've deposited with them. Yeah. So when you withdraw money that was previously deposited, it starts to constrain the business and metrics and deposit requirements that these banks are supposed to have. And what happened was, in the good old-fashioned bank run, more people made withdrawals than were making deposits. Deposits went down. They still had money out, and they were triggering their reserve red flags.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that it wasn't a consumer bank. That's something I was wondering about. Is that is this something that consumers, normal consumers that aren't in startup world, aren't entrepreneurs, do we have to be concerned about this? Is this something that everyone should be paying attention to, kind of thing?
Let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Signature Bank services mostly law firms and real estate owners. Mostly, accounting firms, law firms, and real estate owners. Yeah. They don't have a lot of regular guy consumer deposits. Mm-hmm. Signature Bank had a good old-fashioned bank run as well, because the people said, you know what, I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm going to pull money out of this bank. Yeah. Those depositors became uncomfortable. What do they know that we don't? What do these tech companies and law firms and accounting firms, what do they know that we don't? They may be more of a leading indicator than the consumer behavior, for sure. We should look up to and watch them and watch what they do. George, if you're asking me if this is all going to trickle downward onto the consumer and onto the consumer banks, and we should all just go run and withdraw our money, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you received any emails. I bank at a lot of different places. Yeah. All week I've been receiving emails. Dear customer, we just wanted to let you know our liquidity is great. We're in such a strong position. Here's our metrics. Here's how we stack up to every other bank our size. And I got all these emails, and everyone's trying to say, keep calm, have confidence, don't worry, we're fine. But at the end of the day, you can't quell consumer fear. When the consumer has fear, all bets are off. Mm-hmm. They could make a bank run. They could go into crypto. I mean, this is exactly what crypto was meant for, right? You don't want to trust the banking system. Here, trust Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what it was meant for. Yeah. And events like this are exactly what's going to continue to support, prop up, promote, and advocate for the cryptocurrencies and the crypto markets. Yeah. This is exactly what we're talking about. People want to withdraw their money from the banks. They have to do something with it. They don't know where to go. They don't trust anybody or anything. Bitcoin. That sounds pretty good at a time like this. So it doesn't surprise me that Bitcoin shot up. I don't know what this means for the consumers. I think we're okay for the time being. Here's why. We talk about how we don't want the taxpayer dollar to have to bail out these banks and bail out these companies when we hear about these companies going under. The politicians say, oh, no, we're not going to bail them out. We're not going to bail them out. The first thing Joe Biden says is we're not going to bail them out. The second thing he said is we're bailing them out. And it's not just Joe Biden. I mean, this has been going on for decades. We talked about this monetary policy has been leading up to this point now for decades. I believe that. But the Fed continues to print money. When you do that, things like this occur. Period. End of discussion. There was so much money in the system before that banks didn't have to pay a high interest rate on a savings deposit account. Bank interest rates were at 0.01%. You remember that? They're a little higher now, and they're going to get a little higher again because of the lack of confidence. They're going to want to have the interest rates that you get on your depository accounts be a little higher so that you're more incentivized to put your money with the banks. But when you put your money with the banks, guys, don't forget this. They don't keep it. They turn around and they put it out on the street. They lend it to borrowers like you and I so we can buy homes, cars, businesses, HELOCs, whatever we need money for. They're there to lend it to us, and we have to sign personally for it. They want collateral, and they're going to get the collateral, and they're going to sell us that money at a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, maybe more interest rate. The credit card companies, they're extending credit, right? Because they want us to pay a high interest rate. These banks and credit card companies, they don't reward you with anything. You know, your cashback credit cards, it's like what? Under 1%, right? You know, so of course, that's like a good deal for them. And you're paying all the annual fees, and they charge the vendors. Amex charges, I think, 6% to their vendors. Visa, MasterCard is anywhere from like 3.5% to 5%, depending on what the products are. So, you know, look at that, right? They pay you under 1%, but they're making 3.5% to whatever. I mean, those are big margins. 100%. If you do it at scale, if you do it at volume. Yeah. So don't forget, when you put your money in a bank, it doesn't stay there. They turn around, they get rid of it as quickly as possible. They don't want it. They don't make money by holding your deposits. They make money by getting rid of your deposits. And when you go and withdraw your deposits, they now no longer have money to lend. And that's what causes the events of this week. So consumers beware. If you were ever dark on the crypto markets and Bitcoin, reconsider it. Look at what happened this week. Bitcoin shot up, bank stocks went down. That is exactly why Bitcoin was created. Exactly. It couldn't have been a more perfect example. Textbook.
We can, talk all day about the doublespeak of Washington in terms of, we're not going to bail out, and then we do bail out. But I was curious with, you're a free market guy, and that's, the ethos that you run with. Do you feel like the bailout, or whatever we want to call this kind of regulation of what happened, was necessary? Do you feel like they should have let the cards play how they play?
Double-sided coin, right? Yeah. If you don't bail out the bank, it ripples to every other bank, doesn't do anything to suppress or quell consumer fear, and you got a big problem. Inside the closed meeting, behind those closed doors, those government leaders were having exactly this conversation. Hey, guys, if we don't bail them out, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to ripple through all the banks, the regional banks everywhere. Everyone's going to run and withdraw their money. It's going to be a disaster, so we have to bail them out. Then the other guy says, well, geez, if we bail them out, then what kind of precedent are we setting? We're spending taxpayer dollars, and these banks were poorly run in the first place, and why don't we let the survival of the fittest take place and let the poorly run banks fail so that the properly run banks can rise up and succeed? Both have strong arguments. And when you're a leader and a legislator and you're in that closed door meeting, you have to make decisions. What do you do? What does the Fed chairman do? He's got to raise interest rates. It's, separate now from the bank issue. But he's got to raise interest rates to quell inflation. But he knows that when he does that, he's going to kill the labor markets and people are going to continue to lose their jobs. What do? You have to do something to tame inflation. Raising interest rates is the only tool he's got. But people are going to lose their jobs. Not 10 people, like 10 million people. Like whatever it is, it's a big number, millions of people. I mean, we hear about it every week. Hundreds of thousands of people are losing their jobs. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I mean, Meta just announced the other day another 10,000.
Yep, their biggest layoff.
We see what's happened in the tech sector. But, there's a lot of pain in the labor markets coming because as these high rates and as this uncertain economic environment continues, it means companies don't want to have a big payroll expense on their books. They're going to get rid of people that they feel are unnecessary, or they're going to double up work and combine roles and reduce the amount of fat, so to speak. But it's tough decisions. There's tough decisions that you got to make. By bailing out the banks, personally, I'm not for it. But I recognize if you don't do anything to support and backstop these banks when they're on the brink of failure or having already failed, you're introducing so much fear and uncertainty into the markets. George, we know what happens when fear and uncertainty is in the markets, right? Uncertainty means people don't want to pay anything. Certainty means we can pay a premium. And markets digest all of that and account for all of that. With a lot of fear, values come down, deposits get withdrawn, turmoil in our world. I mean, it would have been horrible if it was only SVB and Signature Bank. We can deal with it. Had that rippled to every other regional bank, and we'll wait and see because this is only the first week. Let's wait and see what happens next week. But if there's a ripple into the regional bank industry across America, and people make runs on banks like they did with these two banks?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Watch Bitcoin go to $1 million if that happens. So how confident are you in our country's banking system? Do you feel okay having your money in the bank? You need to have money in the bank to pay bills. I get that. But what about your savings? What about your inheritance? What about your retirement? All of that money is sitting in a bank somewhere, and you're only insured up to $250,000 per Social Security number or EIN number. If you have $1 million, you can't break that up into 4 accounts at $250 each and feel that you're insured. You're not. If there's a problem, people are going to lose a lot of money, and the government's not going to be able to backstop every bank, every account, every depositor. They're just not going to be able to. The FDIC is unprepared for a massive event like that. They can handle a bank going under and securing $250,000 and under on the depositors of that bank, but they can't do it for an entire industry.
Yeah.
Just can't. Can you imagine what would happen to our world if the banking industry were to collapse the way we're imagining and talking about right now?
It's hard to imagine.
It would be bad.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to pay bills. Our companies wouldn't be able to make payroll. We wouldn't be able to pay our vendors for materials that we received. You know, it would be bad.
Yeah, infrastructure. I think that's the thing, is like imagining that kind of world is not just, you know, empty bank accounts and bills. It's everything functioning at all, you know.
Yeah, well, look, between bailing out the bank and not bailing out the bank, you know, I hate to say it, I don't want to be bailing out anybody who's a failure, but you know, if you don't, you have problems. Maybe we need to think about other ways to
solve that
to
problem.
protect the consumer and the depositors in the future. But I hate the bailouts because it should be the successful that rise up and win, and the unsuccessful and the bad, poorly run companies that should sink to the bottom and fail. And we should let them sink to the bottom and fail. That's the beauty about a free market. We get the best as a consumer. In the free market, we get the best things when poor companies are allowed to fail and successful companies are allowed to succeed. That's the best for us. But when poor companies are allowed to continue on and be poor, poorly managed, poorly run, poorly operated, it's not good for us. We shouldn't bail them out now. We shouldn't have bailed them out in the past. And we keep bailing because the alternative is far worse.
Yeah.
It's an unfortunate position to be in. You know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So that closed door meeting, they say, you know what? We just got to do it. We just got to do it, because if we don't, we're gonna sink like the Titanic.
We'll be keep an eye on the Bitcoin and praying to the gods. Otherwise,
I promise you, this continues to happen. Bitcoin's going to shoot through the roof.
yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. That's going to be interesting. I wanted to ask you about Citadel. That's come up a few times over the last year. You know, Ken Griffin
Burns.
moving down to Florida. Yeah, I know. Freudian slip.
Quite different people.
Very different person, I believe. I've never met either of them, but I think they are quite different.
Look very good at what they do.
Yeah, well, and that's what I wanted to ask is, like, in 2018, I read this article that Citadel basically hired an entire weather service. That they hired a bunch of scientists and analysts, and their weather forecasts for Citadel were more accurate than most meteorologists, most weather.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and obviously there are many components that make Citadel as successful as it is. I think it's the most successful hedge fund of all time as of right now. But it got me thinking, what are outsized investments or business decisions that you've made that may look extreme from the outside? But
this is a great conversation. Ken Griffin was just fed up with the fluff meteorologist that he would see on the evening news. I mean, I know everybody is. We all joke about the weatherman and the weather report for a reason, because they're just a bunch of idiots. They're using retail technology to deliver highly glossy and highly packaged information to us so that we can drive to work safely, so that we can plan our holiday travel safely.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's all they do, and they're so wrong all the time, and they're a joke, and the whole system is a joke. And when we consume our weather from these meteorologists who are like clearly only there because they look good, I just wonder. So this guy says screw it, and he hires his own scientists and meteorologists, puts them on his own payroll, and gives them a task, and they're far more accurate. Are you kidding? Of course they are. I've had to hire my own engineers. I've had to hire my own people because I didn't believe what was being provided to me. In those circumstances, I always ended up being better off. He didn't want to believe the Channel 6 News meteorologist, right? Who wants to listen to that if it's never really accurate? Well, he didn't want to listen to it. It wasn't accurate, and he took matters into his own hands. He could afford it, hired his own team of people, and it turns out that he doesn't have to rely on Channel 6 News meteorologists because his people are giving him more accurate information. If you're in business and you don't like the information you're getting and you think that you can have better information, don't be afraid to pay for it or get it or hire people to give it to you or seek out advice or Google it or whatever, right? Take matters into your own hands. I haven't listened to the TV news in years.
Yeah. Same.
You know, I have what I think are really accurate weather apps. I've got a couple of them on my phone, and I look at those, and they're a lot more reliable than TV, and even those aren't even that reliable. This guy hired his own scientists. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for you, like, what is the tipping point? What is the calculus that goes into those decisions when you, because it's not, I feel like those aren't things to be taken lightly, to hire your own engineer, to hire your own services.
Sometimes I know. Sometimes I'm suspect. Like, it's not right, you know, trust but verify. So I'm trying to verify. Like, I think I'm getting okay information, but I got to verify it.
Yeah.
And if it's an important piece of data, or if it's a critical metric in a deal that I'm doing, or I have to verify anything in business, I don't want to leave it to chance. If I spend a couple of bucks and I get an independent appraiser, I get an independent scientist, an independent engineer, an independent architect to look at whatever my issue is, you know, it's going to cost me a couple of bucks, but I'll have a second set of eyeballs on it. They're going to put it down in a written report. They're licensed. They're going to give me what they think is an accurate written report supported by data, supported by findings, supported by actual eyeballs on the asset inspections. You know, and it's better than not having it. Yeah. You just got to pay the money. You just got to pay the money to get it.
Yeah.
You know, but I get suspects sometimes. Like, I'll see a building and I'll wonder, what's the useful life left in a roof? Like, I think I know after 34 years of doing it, I think I know, you know, what a roof looks like. And I think I know what a foundation that needs repair looks like. But, you know, I hire a third party because I have investors, I have banks, I have insurance companies. I don't want anyone to look to me ever and be like, Peter, you should have known this. You didn't see it. You should have seen it, you know? So if I'm suspect, I trust, but I verify, and then the verification I get, I have to pay for it. Ken Griffin had to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he did with those meteorologists or what the information was used for that they provided to him, but
they're quite secretive in general.
Yeah, but good on them. Yeah. Good on them. Nothing that says that you can't go out there and hire your own professionals too.
Trust but verify. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You actually brought this to my attention that in 2022, New York City had the most police resignations in like 2 decades.
Sad.
And by all accounts, this seems largely due to talent being poached by other towns, higher paying jobs from other towns, better hours in other towns and districts.
Better job, better hours, less bullshit, higher pay.
Yeah, so it may seem odd to bring this up in a business podcast, but it really centers on something we've talked about a lot, which is city budgets. That, like, the NYPD has the largest, their third largest agency budget in the city, and is still struggling to be competitive in starting salaries.
You've got New York that's been a little bit of an anti-police environment politically and socially lately. You've got the actual dollars in the budgets shrinking. You've got a bit of a budget crisis happening in New York City and other cities where property values, the single largest revenue line for a city is the property taxes. So values have come down because of the office buildings being vacant. You know, the look back during the pandemic with the property values, you know, perhaps the pendulum will swing in the other direction next year and the year after, and they'll get some more money back in the coffers. But the police department needs a big budget to operate, to hire, to pay salaries, competitive salaries. They can only pay what the budget is that they're given. So it's a tough position, but it's no surprise to me. We talked about this maybe a month or two ago about how these cities are going to have to make up for all this lost revenue because their property taxes are all cratering. You know, this is one of the ways. They're going to cut police budgets. They're not going to fund any more to these different agencies. Police are going to say, hey, man, we need money. We got to hire people. We got to be more competitive. They're going to say, sorry, we don't have the money. And what's going to happen? Cops are going to leave. They're going to go to Piscataway. They're going to go to Hoboken. They're going to go to Long Island, wherever, but they're going to leave. And it's sad and it's a shame. We need the police. We need them to be psyched to show up and do their job every day. Why? Because we don't want to show up and do their job, right? Like, we don't want to do that. I don't want to wear a gun on my belt and a bulletproof vest and hope that I make it home at night. So these people need to be paid a fair compensation, you know, more than fair, because we don't want to do it.
No, totally.
And I think this is going to be the thing that changes now, because there's going to be this big drop in enrollment, and the people are going to leave. They're not going to be able to hire new people. They're going to have to readjust. Oh, by the way, you know who else is readjusting salaries?
Who's that?
The airlines are readjusting salaries for the airline pilots.
Yeah.
Big time. Big time, because those salaries for those pilots lagged and lagged and lagged for a long, long time. And we all know people that work for these airlines, and we all hear these stories about how horrible these airlines are as employers.
Yeah.
Right? We've all heard it. And the delays, the unreliability of the air. I mean, they could be great jobs.
Yeah.
But the way these airlines work and the economics of running an airline, it's tough. So they can't really pay that much, and they haven't over the past, couple of decades. Now that's all being rethought, and they're upping the salary discussions for all of these for pilots and all these airlines to be quite attractive now. And good on them. They should. I'm not a pilot.
Yeah.
How many pilots do you know? It's hard to become a pilot.
100%.
You have to be physically healthy, mentally healthy. It's rigorous. You need to be firing on all pistons, right? Yeah. You've got hundreds and hundreds of lives in your hands when you fly these planes. It should be a high-paying job. Come on, people. Police, firefighters should be high-paying jobs. You want these people to be paid well. They're doing a job that you and I can't do, nor do we want to. So there's a lack of supply of people coming into these jobs. We need them. Society needs them. Mm-hmm. The firefighters, the first responders, the EMTs, the police, the pilots. Yeah. I mean, these are tough jobs. Yeah. They should pay a lot of money for these people. These people should be psyched to show up and work and do those jobs, and they should stay there for a long time. We need them. Society needs them. The airline should pay more. But you know what's going to happen? They're going to pay more, and they're going to pass the costs on to the consumer.
I think that's the thing. That's what's so interesting about this conversation is I think most people would agree with you, if they watch this video and they say, oh, yeah, of course we should pay more police. Of course we should pay pilots more. But the question is, of where does it come from? And, in this case,
municipal budgets.
Exactly. We've talked about before about like everything is connected.
Everything's connected.
And so these things that we feel like, I don't need to go in office. So why is it a big deal that office values are going down? Well, this is why it's a big deal, because then it passes on to, police department.
Then that property doesn't pay taxes, and then the taxes aren't there to pay police and firefighters and first responders.
Yeah. So it's just a reminder that everything, even the things that you feel like are not related to you are probably related
we
to
are all connected. We are an interwoven web in society of people, places, businesses, products, and things, and we all rely on one another. Last week, we spoke about that $6,000 medical bill. It's a tough bill to pay if you have to pay a $6,000 medical bill, but look at all of the people and things that are attached to that that get paid when you get charged and pay a $6,000 medical bill. There's administration, there's doctors, assistants, there's hospitals, there's ambulance drivers, it goes on and on and on. And this is the economy that we have, for better, for worse. This is the way it is. I think it's pretty good, but it's not perfect.
And I think that's the recognition that we all need to realize at least what the framework is before you can do anything about it, either reforming or figuring solutions. So that makes sense. You posted about converting a cold storage produce facility into the largest indoor cannabis grow facility in the state.
Yes, sir.
I'm saying state because I don't know if you can share which state yet, but
not yet.
Yeah,
that's why I intentionally said the state.
Yeah. So what is that process like? What are some of the critical steps necessary to get to that point?
Oh, the process. Well, first of all, you have to have licensing and zoning.
Okay.
In the cannabis industry, everything revolves around a piece of real estate being located in a jurisdiction that allows it to happen by ordinance. So you have to have the zoning and you have to have the permit, land use permit or business license to allow you to grow or sell cannabis. So we have that, and it was a cold storage produce storage and processing facility. Look, once we got the licensing and the permitting, we simply just moved the produce out and we're moving the cannabis in. It's as simple as that.
That's pretty
great. The
great.
produce is going to nearby sites, 2 different sites nearby. It's going to make room for the cannabis. It's 150,000 square feet. Wow. And these things are very expensive, and you can imagine 150,000 square feet, and you have to retrofit a little bit and build out the irrigation and you spread the utilities around properly. I mean, it's got to be ready for the new use.
Yeah.
So it's not a cheap undertaking. It's actually tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But once you do it, it's a great opportunity. It's going to be a great business. And so the process really starts with permissions, zoning, land use, business licenses. Then you get into deploying capital to invest to convert the property physically to be from handling watermelons and cantaloupes to now handling cannabis.
Yeah.
And you have to make it secure, and it has to be in compliance with the state's cannabis regulatory body so that it's safe and secure and has the various features that make it qualify for an indoor cannabis growing facility. This has all of that, and so now it's just a matter of bringing in the irrigation technology and the lighting technology, spreading out the utilities, getting the water distributed around and putting in the shelving and the stacks, and that's what we're doing now.
Now, as the future of cannabis kind of expands, do you feel like indoor grow facilities is that like the frontier? Do you feel like most people are going to shift into that direction?
So, I'll tell you about indoor growing. Growing cannabis indoors is typically a money-losing proposition. Okay. It's very expensive. It's very difficult. It yields the highest quality product, for sure, because you can control it. It's a controlled environment. So when you marry the controlled environment of the indoor grow with like a great grower who's got experience, who can do it, usually get a great product. But it's so expensive. George, these indoor facilities, even at like 20,000 feet or 30,000 feet of indoor growable size, they're tens of millions of dollars. Wow. To buy the real estate, to get it licensed, permitted, and zoned, the lawyers, the lobby, the towns that you have to go before to get the permissions, it's impossible. And once you do, you either have to build a new building if there wasn't one there already, or you have to retrofit an existing building like what we were just talking about at the cold storage place. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. And a lot of people in this industry are capital constrained. As a matter of fact, that's one of the key features that you see right now of all the various different segments of the cannabis industry, is that people are capital constrained. Even the big successful companies don't have access to capital. The banking systems aren't there. The private investor money is pulled back. Look at the times we're in right now. Yeah. Right now is not typically when you see a lot of private equity money come into these high-risk incipient phase businesses like cannabis. I mean, all of them got funded during the fat years of like 2015 to 2021. But now that money is dried up. Mm-hmm. Those buildings have been constructed. The infrastructure is put into place. If they're not selling, they don't have any access to capital.
Right.
Can't get a loan. It's tough.
Yeah.
Very, very tough to get a loan. You know, the banking industry isn't there yet. It's trying to get there. So you really need revenue from the sale of your product to fund your operations. And a lot of the people in the cannabis industry just are having unpredictable, lumpy, inconsistent revenue, if any at all. Mm-hmm. And it's not enough to keep a steady workforce in place. It's not enough to pay the recurring expected fixed expenses.
So what made this facility attractive if this is usually a very challenging process?
Yeah, good question. So here's how this deal panned out. The real estate got licensed and permitted, and it got contributed into the deal along with the investor money that came in. So now the real estate was there, the zoning was there. All we needed to do was remove produce, put in cannabis. We had the licenses, and we're up and running in about 8 months. So we just started construction. I call it construction, but the retrofit. We just started the retrofit a month ago. So by August, September, October, we're going to be out the door with our product and selling. The other thing you need, George, is you need expertise. You can't get, Bobby Bag of Donuts to come in and start growing cannabis. And that's what you see in the cannabis industry a lot. There's so many people attracted to it. They want to be in the business. They want to open up a dispensary. They get a social justice license. They get a retail license. They get a distribution license, whatever license they give. And they're giving out a lot of these licenses. A lot of people are coming in. They don't have the experience. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the capital. So you need capitalization. You need the real estate. You need the zoning, licensing, permitting. You need a great operator. And you need a great grower. You need someone who knows how to grow this stuff profitably, efficiently. Growing indoors is different than growing outdoors. You have to know how long to keep the flower going for before you harvest it. You have to know when to plant the seeds so that the next harvest and crop comes up. And you have to do it so that there's no lag time. There's a few operators in our country that are really the best. We have one of those few.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it feels like this really centers on a lot of the topics we often talk about, which, like paying attention to the deal, making sure the deal is right. When we talked about building versus, renovation, that this feels similar in that sense of, trying to get to cash flow as soon as possible, and then having the right jockey for the horse. It's like all those things
George,
combining.
I only want to be in business with the best. I get calls every week. Peter, I hear you're in the cannabis industry. My cousin Joey wants to open up a store. He's looking for an investor. Sorry, Joey, I'm not your guy. Right? Yeah. But if I get a call that goes something like this, Peter, here's the deal. We've got the absolute best grower in the country. We've got the best operators. He's got the best staff. Multi-generational agriculturalists are going to run this grow. We've got a huge piece of property in a great location. It's licensed and permitted and zoned already. All the lawyers did all the work. We're going to invest all this money, and we're going to get to work growing and selling cannabis. There's a supply constraint issue in this market. This facility is going to solve the supply constraint issue.
Yeah.
That's a conversation I'll have. But I don't want to get a call where somebody's dog walker sister's best friend is looking to, open up a cannabis store that's 1,000 square feet in Chickapatapank, Pennsylvania somewhere.
Yeah.
That's just, it's not going to be for me. Someone else can do that deal, and someone else can maybe make money and have a great investment, and there's a good partnership there, but it's not what I would look for. I want to be in business with the best, the biggest, the brightest, the most talented, the most experienced, the most capitalized, the well-connected people politically, legally, all of that. I got to check all those boxes with this business because it's the wild, wild west right now.
Disregard that email that I sent you with that cannabis deal from this afternoon. It's not good.
Oh, did you say is your uncle's cousin's daughter's girlfriend looking for?
Yeah. So just disregard it.
I will disregard.
Move on. I wanted to ask you about Yardi Rent Cafe had this analysis that they're claiming that
I love when we talk about the computer programs that make the analysis.
Yeah, there's kind of like insider
baseball.
But tell
me, sorry.
No, it's okay. That they are claiming that multifamily demand is shifting back to New Jersey from saying that the focus has largely been in Florida and Texas and the Southwest.
Well, the focus has been in Florida and Texas. But it's not shifting. It's not shifting away from Florida or Texas or Nashville to New Jersey. What's happening in New Jersey, I think, and I have to read this article, but what I think is happening in New Jersey is that as New York continues to try and get back on its feet post-pandemic, people are looking for places to live. New York doesn't have a lot of places to live, so they go to right outside of New York. They go to Jersey City, Bergen County, all the surrounding towns and jurisdictions around New York City that have the transportation and the access. Yeah. Hey, they're only working from the office 2 or whatever days a week anyway. So we'll get a bigger apartment just outside the city. It'll be a little less money, and it's on the train line. It's on the subway line. I think that's what's happening. I don't know that all of a sudden the country is now shifting to wanting to live in New Jersey. My God, actually, quite the opposite from what I can tell you, because I'm in New Jersey every day of my life, is that people are like leaving New Jersey. What we're seeing is that as more and more people want to continue to move to the New York metropolitan area, therein lies New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I bet you if you look at rents out on Long Island and Westchester, those are also increasing, and those markets are also hot as well, because it's just going to be bigger space for less money than living in Manhattan.
Yeah, when I saw that headline, I feel like, well, the Jersey market may be hot. We've talked a lot about how the supply is just not there.
Not there.
Yeah, so
I don't know that it's a shift.
Right.
It's not a shift. The word shift is throwing me off.
Yeah.
Texas is still on fire. The Sun Belt, Arizona's seeing some reduction in rents, but it's still pretty active.
Yeah.
I mean, new leases are being signed and absorption is occurring. But it's not shifting away from those markets in favor of New Jersey. It's just New Jersey's doing well too.
I want to bring this quote to you. Once you learn to quit, it becomes a habit. I know you're a fan of Vince Lombardi, and that
love Vince Lombardi.
Is of his.
Is that a Vince Lombardi
That's
quote?
a Vince Lombardi. And
I love that.
What about that message resonates with you today?
Once we learn anything, it becomes habit. So if quitting is something that we learn, man, let me tell you, it's only easier the next time and way easier the time after that.
Yeah.
Boom, habit. I never want to learn to quit. I want to learn to persevere. That's the habit I want to learn. If I ever have to quit for, I don't even know whatever reason, but if I ever have to quit, it better be because of death or dismemberment, But like quitting, not something you want to put in your memory banks and program into your muscle memory. So I couldn't agree more with that. And it's not just quitting. It's like, negative mindset, poor attitude, whining, complaining, like all that stuff. Like, I don't want to learn to do that. I don't want my kids to learn to those things.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I want them to learn quite the opposite so that they repeat the opposite behavior. I don't want to repeat the negative behavior. I want to repeat the positive. So I'm glad you brought that up. I am a fan of Vince Lombardi, and I do think that quitting is among the many things that we shouldn't learn and program into our memory banks because it does become habit.
I love the muscle memory thing you bring up because that makes me think of Michelle Yeoh, who just won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once. She did a bunch of things with Jackie Chan back in the day, and she was talking at one point about she did a lot of stunts, and she had this stunt where she fell off a car onto another car, and she was supposed to break the windshield and fall through the windshield. Well, the windshield didn't break, and so she fell off of the car onto the ground. And the director comes up to her and says, oh, well, what do you want to do? And she was like, oh, let's go again. Because she knew if she didn't do that, if she took a half hour to settle in and figure out what went wrong or whatever, that's when injuries happen. Yeah. And that reminds me a lot of how you phrased that. That
I love that story. I haven't heard that, but I agree. I would probably have done the same thing. Yeah. I want to get up and go try it again. Yeah. I don't want to sit there and wallow in my...
in anything.
Yeah, in anything. Great quote. I love the Vince Lombardi quotes.
Yeah. Well, I have another quote. Life is an investment. If you put in all you have, you'll take out even more. That's a quote of yours.
I said that.
You said that. Yeah. And
I love that. As you were saying it, I'm thinking, wow, this is really good too. Who's that? That's a Peter Siegel quote?
That's a Peter Siegel original.
Wow.
And I wanted to ask you, what does that mean to you, and how should people think about that quote in order to be successful?
Nothing happens unless you put in work. Nothing happens unless you put in effort. With anything, not just about business, but with anything. So when you put in work, when you put in the effort, that's as much of an investment as making a financial investment. If not more, honestly, because you have to actually try, man. When you try, look, I had a conversation with someone on the plane coming home from Miami yesterday. We were talking about how poor students we were when we were younger. It was tough to learn. I wasn't a great reader. I'm still not a great reader. Thank God for audiobooks. Yeah. And when I do read, I read in very small, consumable snack bites. I can't read more than a couple of pages at once. It's embarrassing, but that's the truth for me. But the way I learned, rather than reading, was I would take notes on the lined yellow notepads, and I would write the things that my professors and teachers were saying. And the act of writing it down, that effort of writing things down, ingrained the knowledge in my head. I had to memorize things before I really learned it, and it became conceptually something that was that I comprehended. But I had to memorize it first. Yeah. It was very difficult to memorize because I had a difficult time reading. So I had to write it. And the writing, and over and over and over and over and over again, man, that's how I learned. I had to put in that work if I wanted the good result. That was an investment that I had to make. Yeah. I had to invest being a bit of an idiot and writing these simple things. It was simple for other people, but they could read it and see the written word on the page and digest it in the textbook, or up on the chalkboard where the teacher was writing it. But for me, I had to write it down and I had to repeat it over and over again. It was really, challenging for me as a kid. But I had to make that investment because if I didn't, I wouldn't get a result. I wouldn't have learned anything. I would have, I don't know what my life would have been. Right. But I just would have been even worse in school than I was. And I really didn't start to get good grades until graduate school. I was a very average student in high school and a very average student in college. But in graduate school, something happened. The light switch got flipped, and I was able to somehow figure out how to deal with my impediments to learning. But it was a big investment. Yeah. The point of this is I had to make an investment in effort and work. And every day, that's what life is, man. From when you're a baby to when you die, you have to put in work and effort. You give things meaning by the work and effort you put in to relationships, to businesses, to projects, to degrees at school, to sports and teams. You determine the outcome based on what you invest into it. If you don't invest anything into it, you're not getting anything out of it. Period. End of discussion. Life is all about making investments, financial or otherwise, every single moment of every day. Yeah,
especially when you talk about school, I feel like that's particularly important where people think they're paying $40,000 a year for a piece of paper. But if you put in the effort, then that paper is actually valuable. It's actually worth that much, as opposed to
what this reminds me of?
Otherwise, you're spending $40,000 a year for a piece of paper that was just the cost of the paper that's printed on it.
We talked about this with the Princeton University students that felt that the teacher was too hard on them, and he was making it too hard, and it was too difficult to take the tests and do well on the tests. Teacher was like, I'm just teaching the material.
Right.
They're like, oh, you're making it too hard, and now I can't get into med school because you didn't give me a good enough grade. Like, are you kidding me? And there was a group of these students. It wasn't like one student. It was like a lot of students that were saying that. Yeah. Teacher was like, yo, man, like, I'm just teaching you the material the same as I've done for 30 years. I'm a tenured professor.
And it's just completely missing the point of what you're doing there in the first place. And it's because that's how we're conditioned. We're in high school, we're taught, get good grades so that you can go to a good school, so that you can get a job, as opposed to, it was a light bulb for me when this guy, Yadon Israel, who I went to school with in Pace, he's very successful now. I think he's an editor at Random House. I remember saying the value of his degree happened in the cafeteria. It didn't happen he paid the money to go to the classrooms, but that the ROI of his degree happened entirely in the cafeteria, because that's where he was actually bumping shoulders with people, talking to people, networking, and that's where he actually created the paths to success for himself. And that was like a huge moment for me, that I was like, oh shit, I've wasted a whole 2 years of trying to get my value out of class when I could have done that online. The value that you can get in a university is the networking. And if you're not taking advantage of that, then, it's nothing. Yeah.
It is.
Talking about this, value and money. Last thing I wanted to ask you is, people often say you need money to make money. And this is sometimes brought up as an excuse when people are afraid to start a business, because they say, well, I don't have any money, and you need money to make money. What do I do? Is there any validity to that concept at all? And what do you do with that?
You don't need money to make money. It's sometimes, not all the time, easier to make money when you have money, but you don't need money to make money. I'll give you a couple of examples. Yeah. If you don't have any money, but you have access to capital, or if you don't have any money and you have great opportunities or deals that no one else has, and you can present them to people with capital, you can make money. So people that have nothing can succeed, and this is often the path of an entrepreneur or someone who's trying to be an investor. They can often succeed just by having access to other people's capital when they don't have any of their own, or by having access to a great investment or deal because of some proprietary relationship, or because they saw something that the rest of the market didn't see and they went and they seized it. If you have a deal and if you have access to capital, you can always make money. You don't need money. You just need access to money. There's a difference.
All right. Well, this was fantastic, Peter.
Was it fantastic?
Yeah, it was. I love this. Do you have anything you wanted to touch on before we head out? Anything?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to go tinker with some vintage guitars.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And
thanks,
I'll
George.
See you next time. If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a comment or review. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter at SiegelCap, and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.